May I come in? Assalamu alaikum.
Oh. Speak for yourself, introduce yourself, sell yourself to all of us.
That's quite an interesting task that you've set for me, but I'll try to do my best. My name is Saif Islamabad, as I've mentioned right now. I belong to district Karak from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. My father was a military officer. He was a doctor in the Army Medical Corps, and my childhood has been spent moving from one station to another. Upon his retirement, my family settled in Rawalpindi, where I completed my education. I did my matric from the Army Public School, Ordnance Road, and my FSc from the Fauji Foundation College, Rawalpindi. In both of these institutes, I have made it to the honor boards of these respective institutes. Moving on, I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering from NUST, the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Sciences. Upon my graduation, I gave the CSS exam, and after that, I've started writing for several national and international platforms, including nationally, it's Express Tribune. Internationally, I've written for the Diplomat, TRT World, Japan Times. I've been quoted by Foreign Policy magazine, so that's like one of my biggest achievements in terms of writing. I've written before that as well. I've published 2 poetry anthologies. One when I was 13, second when I was 16, and I've written a short story on the transgender community. Currently, I work as a foreign policy analyst at an Islamabad-based think tank. My preferences are Pakistan Administrative Services, Foreign Services of Pakistan, and Police Service of Pakistan in that particular order. When it comes to my values, there's one value that I greatly appreciate in myself. That's perseverance. Throughout my life, I've persevered through different challenges that have been set forth for me, and that one ability has led me to this particular chair. So that would be about me.
Thank you. So you hail from Karak.
Yes, sir.
That is a KPK province.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us a profile of KPK province? What
Sir,
is your province?
So KPK province has 5 divisions and 35 districts. It's so basically there are the Pashtun identity. There are several ethnic groups in KP. Primarily, it's Pashtuns, but there are Hazaras and there are other people as well. Hazara Hindu speaking Hazara as well, but Hazara from the Balochistan and the Central Asian steppes as well. Pashtun language, since I identify as a Pashtun, Pashtun language identity extends from the language Pashto. There are 2 primary dialects. One is Pashto and the other is Pakhto. Pashto is spoken in southern KP, and Pakhto is northern KP speaks Pakhto. My particular district, Karak, is borders Punjab, but my maternal side, which is Masood, my mother is a Masood, so that they hail from South Waziristan, which borders Afghanistan. So that would be my understanding of the whole province.
If the government of Afghanistan, they hire you
Yes, sir.
as an advisor to their government, in the current scenario, what you keep on learning in the newspaper, what you will advise them?
Sir, I would advise them to be inclusive. I understand that they do not have ample experience of governance because they've been running an insurgency for the past 40 years. So I would advise them to be inclusive, to try to stop the brain drain that's happening over there. And they're doing that. They're cognizant of the value of the expertise that other people bring. That would be my primary advice. Moving forward, I would try to get them to get in line with the expectations that have been set forth for them internationally, while not compensating or while not sacrificing their core values, which they deem to be Islamic, which they deem to be motivated by Islam. So that would be my advice to them.
By the way, the TLP is demonstrating.
Yes, sir.
And what is your advice to the government of Pakistan?
Sir, I think TLP is quite a unique situation because we've had foreign groups working in Pakistan, but this is a domestically existing movement, and I feel that it's a tricky situation. And I do not feel that it should be resolved with strict measures. I understand that the reason I do not believe that it should be resolved with such strict measures is that the sentiments that are involved are religious, and Barelvi sect, being one of the largest sects in Pakistan, identifies with that movement. So I feel for the government, I would say, and that's what they are doing right now, is to take a multifaceted approach, bring in ulama, bring in politicians to negotiate, and get to a point where mutual interests are explored. In the longer run, I would say that we work towards including this particular group in the governance system, so that they not only have the voice at platforms where they need to be, and the reason for, and it diminishes the reason for them to be at the street. So bring them into parliament, absorb them into the whole system, and that would be my approach for them.
Can you tell us,
yes, sir,
what are the positive and negative aspects of social media in the society?
Sir, social media is quite an interesting development that has taken center stage over the past few years. On the positive side, social integration. We interact with each other, we understand each other's value. There's a global culture that has emanated from social media. I know what people in America think, Americans know what we think. So in case of the Taliban, as you've mentioned, they've had a very interesting and proactive social media campaign to raise their voice. If without social media, we would not be hearing the stories that we hear from the Taliban. So as a medium for communication and medium for meeting expectations or conveying expectations, it's quite a positive platform. But on the other hand, if we see the Brexit vote referendum or the 2016 presidential elections, I feel that social media has played a negative role as well. It has created filter bubbles where people are fed the same thoughts all over and over again, and has therefore created polarization in our society. The solution for this would be regulation, and I think US is cognizant of that. They are currently working on antitrust measures. So that would be my view on social media.
How do you see the future of democracy in Pakistan?
I think the future of democracy is bright. We've had successive governments. Of course, there have been some challenges along the way, but the fact that we've had successive governments that we have not had in the past shows that we are progressing. Albeit that progress might be slow, but it's progress nonetheless. So my outlook of democracy is bright.
Give me some good reason.
Okay. So
share some data.
Currently, any data does not come to my mind, but of course I'll look into it.
Do you think this regulation by PEMRA will be useful for the electronic media?
The PDMA regulation?
No, regulation. Because you said this.
Pakistan Media Development.
Because currently we used to watch Pakistani TV. I have stopped watching it.
Yes.
It is almost blank now.
I feel PEMRA has a very important role. I also feel that sometimes that role is a bit intrusive. So what we need to do is that we need to moderate our expectations, but we also need to define red lines that do not need to be crossed. So freedom should exist, but it should be within the constraints of the red lines that we've set. They should not go against the state. They should not attack or talk about our institutions. They should not raise religious controversies. I think that the debate on, or the verdict on, the Pakistan Media Development Authority is still going on. But to be honest, I am personally a supporter of it. I believe that we need to incorporate the social media angle into our media discourse, because right now there's a lot happening that we are not able to regulate or control. So that would be my 2 cents on it.
How you will differentiate fundamental rights with human rights? And what will be your priority, fundamental rights or human rights?
Sir, fundamental rights and human rights are inspired by fundamental rights. Their interpretations might be different, but that's one of the things that I've personally written about as well, that we do not have to impose the same definition of human rights all over the world. They exist in different capacities. They emanate from different cultures. So my focus would be on fundamental rights rather than human rights, because I feel that human rights in itself derive from fundamental rights, and fundamental rights as our religion states have been stated in the Holy Quran, and it states it explicitly. So I think it's a good source to refer to when we are talking about this issue.
Thank you.
How do you see the merger of FETA in the KP province? How is it working?
I think it's an important step, particularly when it comes to inclusivity, because my maternal side belongs to South Waziristan, and which was part of FATA. I feel that there are grievances at this moment which are emanated by, or which are expressed by certain elements that sometimes go against the state. But I think that, again, inclusivity, which is the main essence of KP-FATA merger, should be our approach towards it. We should include them into the mainstream politics, include them in, which we are doing, set quotas for them in top universities, top ranking universities, NAST, LAMS, IBA, and other universities, government universities that can help bring up those people. Currently, there are a lot of people coming from FATA to Islamabad, which is, I feel, a positive step. There is an urban migration happening, and which results in a linkage between FATA and the center that exists in Islamabad. So I feel that it's a positive step. So that would be my view on it.
How will you evaluate the working of a bureaucratic machinery?
I feel we need to make tangible goals, set tangible goals that are data driven and that can be easily evaluated. For example, if there's a qualitative statement, we should convert it into a quantitative, and maybe being an engineer, have a natural proclivity towards quantities rather than qualities. So I would say that we move towards a quantitative setting of goals and agendas that, for example, in this many months, we need to address this many issues. For example, the number of convictions we are looking at, and that is a double sword as well, because some structures might give up on quality to meet those numbers. But I feel that quantitative assessment of our goals is very important. So setting quantities, and then a carrot and stick approach. I feel if someone meets those goals, they should be rewarded, and if someone doesn't meet them over and over again.
Has any reform been introduced in the civil services recently on this count, the point which you are just now discussing?
Sir, I am not aware of
Directory retirement rules.
Okay.
Have you any idea about?
No, sir, I am not familiar, but I'll definitely look into it.
How do you view the foreign policy of Pakistan in the last 3 years?
Sir, foreign policy of Pakistan over the last few years has become a bit more proactive. We've become relevant on the world stage. In the past, we were attacked on international platforms, but there wasn't a commiserate reply to those allegations, and perhaps that has somewhat to do with political will. But it could also do with, and the proactivity that we see right now could also do with the introduction of experts that we've brought in, for example, in the shape of our current national security advisor, who is a distinguished scholar in international affairs. Apart from that, I personally would like to see a more diversified foreign policy approach. In that regard, India is a good example.
Do you think Pakistan stands isolated at the international level?
Sir, at this moment, there are discourses at play that make it look that way, but I do not believe that currently happens, because that is something that is happening right now. Because if we are saying that Pakistan is isolated because XYZ superpower does not agree with us, so there are other powers that are emerging and they do agree with us.
Okay, let's move on. What's Pakistan's nuclear doctrine?
Sir, Pakistan's nuclear doctrine is based on deterrence. We have said that we have been ambiguous about our first strike approach, and that the reason for that is that if, let's say, is to deter our neighbor India, we are also developing low yield nuclear.
No. What is the crux of the you see this doctrine now?
So there was a term. It's just slipped my mind. But I'm familiar with the term that you're referring
Full
to.
spectrum.
Full spectrum deterrence. Exactly.
What does this mean?
So it means that we will go to any extent to deter our enemy from attacking us, and so limited spectrum deterrence as opposed to full spectrum deterrence. Limited spectrum deterrence promises, if I may use that word, some level of damage. Full spectrum deterrence says that we will go to every extent.
You're right.
Yeah.
But why Pakistan? What was the requirement for intensifying the scope of our deterrence?
So there are several reasons. Firstly, is that India has started completing its triad. Secondly, is that their air defense system they're planning on buying S-400 from the Russian allies. Then there is another reason that their homegrown air defense capabilities have significantly improved over the past few years, which makes it difficult for us to maintain our deterrence posture or limited deterrence posture. So full deterrence posture is the way to go in this.
There are others. There are 2-3 other important factors which, like the nuclear supplies group.
Yes.
India is not the member of nuclear supplies group, but it is getting all the, you see, the nuclear technology and everything from all the 44 countries. It can deal with those countries for getting nuclear technology, and it is not the member. You see, it has been exempted. Exemption has been facilitated by America. Pakistan is not its member, so that is one of the main factor. And the Indo-US deal of 2006. And finally, how do you see the ongoing EVM role in our country?
Sir, I feel EVMs, I'm a supporter of introduction of technologies in government services, although they are susceptible to certain risks, but these risks can be mitigated by taking action, particularly on the cybersecurity front. I feel that what we need to do is that there is recently a by-election happening. I think it's National NA 133. We could use it as a sample example where we introduce EVMs, voting, and see what happens before introducing the whole system on a national level. So that would be my approach to it. I have a positive outlook of EVMs, and I feel that it is something that we need to do. Conversion of paper-based trails. We should keep paper-based trails as a contingency plan, but conversion of paper to digital data is something that's necessarily not only in terms of electoral processes, but also in terms of governance. So that is my view on it.
Saif, your favorite personality is Machiavelli.
Yes.
Can you tell us what makes him your favorite personality?
I have developed a realist outlook over the past few years, and that's where the perseverance angle comes in. I feel that Machiavelli is, and Machiavelli is the prince, is his magnum opus. There are various views regarding the prince. Some people say that these are actually Machiavelli's. So Machiavelli is trying to support dictatorial rule. On the other hand, some people say that it's like a satire critique on Cesare Borgia. So there is a confusion over there. Some people say that Machiavelli supports dictatorship. So then again, if you look at his discourses of Levi, he talks about republicanism as well. So as a realist, I feel that we need to see the world as it is, and I feel that is the reason that is the way through which we can affect change, as opposed to being too optimistic about the outcomes and being blinded by certain developments that are happening simultaneously. One other reason is that that relates to the nature of international relations. I have a realist outlook of it. I feel that we are in a zero-sum game. So if we do not approach the world, the global relations by a realist approach, I feel we would be left behind a lot. So that is the whole discourse in the Prince is of realist nature. So I feel that is something that inspires me when it comes to Machiavelli.
And how do you see the Black Lives Matter movement in USA?
I think it's a very positive development. It has its caveats, but overall it's quite a positive development, and it has been brewing for a while now. I mean, it goes centuries back, but it shows that even the most progressive and the most self-proclaimed, the people who claim to be most progressive or champions of liberal values, have their shortcomings, and I think they're working on addressing it. But then again, there's and as a corollary of the whole Black Lives Matter, there's a discourse that's emanating regarding the critical race theory. There are people who are supporting it. There are people who are opposed to it. It's mainly divided along Republican and Democratic lines, conservative and liberals. Its potential to gather international support is something that makes me that's quite interesting to me. For example, in Africa, we're seeing people relating to those values, and it brings me to one of my other favorite personalities, which is Malcolm X, because he did the same thing. So that is I think it's an interesting approach. The verdict on its outcome is still pending, but I think it will lead us to a more positive place than we are right now at.
And what do you think about the extension of mandate of Chairman NAB?
I'm cognizant of the reasons for doing it. The reforms that are happening, the extension part might be a bit, how do I say it? A bit. It must have its it does have its pros and cons, but the whole other reforms that are happening on making NAB's mandate a bit more specific, those are positive developments. I do not feel that we should have extended the mandate of NAB chairman. But then again, if we're looking at transitioning from one role, NAB's one role to NAB's another role, I feel there must be some constant figure that takes NAB from one part to another.
How do you see US-China rivalry?
Again, I see it completely from realist terms. I feel that there's Graham Allison's Thucydides traps that describes that it's a multifaceted rivalry. I've written a working paper on US-China semiconductor trade war and its impacts all around the world. So I feel that while US-China battle it out with each other, the periphery gets affected. We're already seeing shortages of semiconductors in Pakistan. There are other caveats as well where we are being constantly pressured to take a side. I do not think that we should take a side, but and that's not just in Pakistan, that's all over the world. So it might lead to a bifurcation of the world. For example, there's on one hand there's BRI, on the other hand there's B3W. Then there are then there's Huawei 5G, Digital Silk Road project, and then there's the Clean Network Initiative. So which one do you take? So I feel that it would lead to a bifurcation of the whole global system over time.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Saif, Machiavelli is your favorite. Okay, what makes Machiavelli's political philosophy make him a modern political thinker?
I mean, if you see at the rise of Donald Trump has been using Machiavelli's approach. For example, in Machiavelli's The Prince, he writes about Romero di Arco, where he gets Romero to do his dirty deeds, and then he executes Romero to create a positive image among the masses.
Okay, that's fine. What I mean, out of Dark Ages, his political philosophy was modern. What are those characteristics that makes Machiavelli's political philosophy a modern political philosophy when comparing with the political philosophies of Dark Ages?
I mean, he was a pragmatic philosopher. He talks. Can you please elaborate more on the question?
I mean, in Europe there were Dark Ages, and political philosophers who propounded their political philosophies were not considered as the modern political philosophies. Machiavelli was the first philosopher who took philosophy out of the dark ages. So that is why his political philosophy is considered as the modern political philosophy.
I think I understand.
Okay, leave it. If I would say Chanakya Kautilya and Machiavelli, whom you consider as more realist?
Chanakya.
Chanakya?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your take on common sense?
I mean, common sense is a social construct that's.
I'm asking in US history.
I think common sense paved the way for the revolution, and there are. It would be like.
Who's the author of Common Sense?
Thomas Paine.
Thomas Paine.
Yeah.
Do you think there was any relation between Age of Enlightenment on US history?
Of course.
What?
Basically, the philosophy of Europe, the Enlightenment era philosophy propagated by the likes of Locke, Rousseau, inspired founding fathers of the United States, particularly Thomas Jefferson, and Montague. I think this was Montague who gave the division of power idea.
It's Montesquieu.
Montesquieu, who gave the division of power idea as enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. So there's a direct linkage between Enlightenment values and the U.S. Constitutional development.
Okay, when U.S. Constitution was drafted, there was no rights. James Madison, why there was a need for incorporation of rights, and when they did?
The independent. It was I feel the first 10 amendments that talk about the rights. I think it was 17. The Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
So the rights were enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, and they were missing in the Constitution. So it was necessary so the Bill of Rights maps the Constitution onto the Declaration of Independence. Hence, it was important that the Bill of Rights does exist, guaranteeing liberties and rights and liberties. That's what the Declaration of Independence promises. That was missing from the Constitution, and that was put in through it.
Okay, so if you have a bent of mind toward the realism, where you place social Darwinism in American history?
Social Darwinism in American history, particularly in terms of the industrial age, is obvious. You see the rise of different conglomerates and
name those.
The J.P. Morgan,
and
there was I missed his name. The petroleum. There was a petroleum conglomerate.
Rockefeller.
Rockefeller. Yeah, Rockefeller. These conglomerates led to a diversification of wealth, not a diversification of wealth, a disparity of wealth over time, and this is where social Darwinism come in. And when we go to the Great Depression, for moving forward, I feel that social Darwinism resulted in the increment of poverty rate, which was 25 at its highest point.
आपकी second choice foreign office है. आप realist हैं, आप तो जंग करवा देंगे.
Not necessarily.
Okay, what is neoliberalism?
Neoliberalism is basically an approach towards global politics which focuses on cooperation, and it puts its hopes on international institutions and international justice system. So that sees a positive outlook. Agar main iski example do to Obama was a liberal pragmatist. Current President Biden is a liberal internationalist, which is an extension of neoliberalism. So they focus towards democratic values, promotion of democracies around the world, and other such things. And to answer your other question, I feel one of the most famous realists in recent history, Henry Kissinger, was the one who led to a detente between Russia and the United States by quoting China. So I do not think that realism would necessarily lead to war. It just shapes your understanding of the whole world and shapes the way through which you approach it.
What is Bogra formula?
One unit formula. So it sees Pakistan as a single unit, and West Pakistan as a single unit, East Pakistan as a single unit, and divides the.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's conclude this formal interview. Let's have an informal discussion. And what is your assessment about your performance in this mock interview?
Sir, I feel I should work more on the governance side. Then there's a refresher of knowledge that I need to get. I need to revise my course a bit more. International relations, I feel I'm good at it since it relates to my job, so I'm naturally working on it. But I feel that I should focus more on the past side of things rather than FSP sides of things. That would be my evaluation of it.
Thank you. Saif, I think you are very good. You have a very pleasant personality, smiling face. You're intelligent. Communication skills are very fine. Body language is okay. You're confident. You are knowledgeable, and I think you're original, analytical. Of course, you're critical, and you're creative. The advice I can give you is to just keep it up, keep on reading what you have already identified. Now you have to be careful about controversial issue in your the D-Day. Don't get involved in some controversy because you have got your own opinion. Well, let's see. We should not get into the controversial issues. वहाँ लोग बैठे होते हैं, ठीक है ना? तो energy level is fine. Best of luck. You will make it.
Inshallah.
अच्छा, ये सैफुल इस्लाम, ये आप जब जवाब देते हैं ना, आप दोनों साइड्स को देकर यू डोंट गिव योर ओन व्यू, छोड़ देते हैं, यू लीव। लाइक मैडम ने आपको सवाल किया एक्सटेंशन का, उसका यानी नैब चेयरमैन का, आप दोनों बातें कर रहे हैं कि जी ये ठीक है, ये नहीं होना चाहिए, लेकिन कंटिन्यूटी भी ज़रूरी है। यू शुड हैव वन व्यू, फर्म व्यू। कंटिन्यूटी क्यों ज़रूरी थी? कंटिन्यूटी मीन्स कि एक आदमी जो है वो पड़ा रहेगा उधर, और बिकॉज ऑफ कंटिन्यूटी ही विल नॉट बी रिमूव फ्रॉम देयर। आप समझते कि नहीं? तो प्लीज़ गिव योर ओन व्यूज़ ऑल्सो एंड फर्म व्यूज़ ले, क्लियर व्यू। इसमें कोई ऐसी जो है ना हेजिटेशन नहीं होनी चाहिए आपको, ठीक है? ये है, दिस इज़ व्हाट आई ऑब्जर्व ऑफ यू, एंड यू आर वेरी आर्टिकुलेट, एंड आई एम श्योर ये थोड़ा सा इसको अपने जो व्यूज़ देते हैं, कीप दिस फैक्टर इन व्यू, ऑब्जेक्टिव होना चाहिए, ठीक?
सर, कौन से थिंक टैंक के साथ काम कर रहे हैं?
The Baad Lab, Musharraf Zaidi. I work with Musharraf Zaidi.
You're doing a great job. सिर्फ ये बेटा कि जूते जो हैं वो लेस होने चाहिए।
बिल्कुल, मैं पहन के ये था ताकि कंफर्म हो जाए कि क्या फीडबैक मिलता है।
You're very realist.
पर ये है कि otherwise you have a good personality, you have a good standard of knowledge. I'm confident you'll do very well.
Thank you.
कब इंटरव्यू?
19th November.
Okay, you have got plenty of time.
So this was my this interview. अभी मैंने तैयारी प्रॉपर स्टार्ट नहीं की, so
जी अभी करो ना।
हाँ, तो अभी मैं करूँगा।
मतलब यू आर माशाल्लाह हो तो सही, लेकिन फिर भी स्टेट ऑफ प्रिपेयर्डनेस में आओ। देखो बात ये है सैफ के जिंदगी के इवेंट होते हैं। दिस इज अ इवेंट ऑफ लाइफ, ठीक है ना? 1200 नंबर का एग्जाम हो गया, नाउ देयर इज 300 मार्क्स। अब इसी इवेंट ऑफ लाइफ को थोड़ा सा भी नेग्लिजेंट हो जाओगे ना, तो इट विल सारी जिंदगी रिग्रेट करोगे। तो दिस इज अ टाइम फॉर यू टू बी वेरी वेरी सीरियस। ये 2 हफ्ते जो है ना, ये सारा रिव्यू करो, पुराने अखबार रिव्यू करो, रोज के अखबार देखो। दिस इज योर फील्ड। तो अपने आप को कंट्रोवर्शियल इशू से अभी इन्वॉल्व ना करो, बाकी जिंदगी पड़ी है, दे विल सिविल सर्विस विल टेम यू, डोंट वरी, ठीक है?
यस सर, मेरा क्वेश्चन है सर, मेरा बैकग्राउंड या मेरे जो प्रोफाइल है वो फॉरेन सर्विसेज के लिए काफ़ी ज़्यादा वो ओवरलैप करती है। So do you think it would diminish my chances of landing in my first preference जो कि पास है?
नहीं, वो कोई ऐसी बात नहीं होती।
आपके मेरिट पे डिपेंड करता है बेटा। इफ योर मेरिट इज हाई यू विल गेट योर फर्स्ट एलोकेशन। रेयरली होता है कि वो आपको पर्सनालिटी बैन लगाते हैं कि इसकी पर्सनालिटी सर्टेन प्रोफेशन की नहीं है, बट दैट इज एक्सेप्शनल। नॉर्मली यू गेट योर फर्स्ट चॉइस। इफ योर ग्रेड इज हाई यू विल गेट इट।
और बाकी एक चीज़ देख लेना कि ये जो सारी डिस्कशन होगी, ये फॉर्मेट जो तुम्हें वहाँ मिलेगा जिसकी तुम फिलिंग करोगे, तो वो इट विल बी सॉर्ट ऑफ वेरिफिकेशन ईच एंड एवरीथिंग। अब आपने बाकी एक्सपीरियंस में बहुत कुछ लिखा हुआ है, इसको आप कम भी कर सकते हो।
हम्म,
बेटर ये है कि अपने लिए लाइबिलिटीज़ कम ही रखो, वो बैगेज हो जाता है ना, जितना ज़्यादा लिखोगे उतना ज़्यादा बैगेज है। तो क्योंकि दिस इज़ ए समथिंग, ये सिलेक्शन प्रोसेस है, तो उसमें जितना ज़्यादा लिखोगे उतनी ज़्यादा डिस्कशन होगी, वहाँ फिर
yes, sir.
थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट हो जाता है। यू हैव टू बी वॉचफुल।
Yes, sir.
तो यू आर ए वेरी, मतलब आई थिंक यू आर ए वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग कैंडिडेट।
Thank you, sir.
बेस्ट ऑफ लक, थैंक यू वेरी
Thank you
मच।
so much, sir.